He is nuts and clearly disturbed. The Standard. He's angry. Vanity Fair. His own family hates him. The New York Post. He sounds like he's transmitting from another galaxy. He is so crazy. The New York Post. Kennedy is a humorless bully living in a paranoid fantasy. Vanity Fair. What the is wrong with Bobby Kennedy? Okay. He's a walking, talking conspiracy theory, the New York Times. He's completely divorced from reality, The Guardian. He is vile, the White House. Being with him was the low point of my summer, Vanity Fair. Bobby Kennedy speaks with a croaking, rasping, painful-sounding voice. His vague explanation is that it's a virus, but more likely it is a crack pipe voice. The Standard. Kennedy is a crank, the New York Times. He is a crank, the New York Times. He's a crank who cranks out whoppers the way Taylor Swift disgorges perfect pop songs, the New York Times. He has conversations with dead people, The Guardian. I wouldn't vote for that guy either.
You're most likely going to have 3 choices for president on your ballot in November. This guy, and this guy. I realize you probably heard a lot of bad stuff about him these last few years. But what if the bad stuff you've heard wasn't even true? And what if there's a whole lot more to him than you even knew?
This pipeline is not going to benefit the American people.
I would urge you not to accept the shackles of courtroom monopoly.
We're being given this land so that we can build cities on a hill. Our civilization will be judged by future generations.
Either way, let's start with some irrefutable facts. This is Bobby Kennedy. This is Bobby Kennedy in 1962. This is his dad. This is his uncle. And this is his other uncle. He was born in 1954. He grew up in Virginia and Cape Cod. He has 7 kids. This is his wife, Cheryl. Yes, she's that Cheryl. He's an attorney. He's won hundreds of cases against companies like Monsanto, Mobil, Massey Energy, Dow Chemical, and a bunch of other big polluters. He's a surfer. He's a falconer. He's a rock climber. He's a river rafter. He's a hunter. He's an outdoorsman. He was a heroin addict and an alcoholic. He's been sober for decades. His voice sounds weird. That's because he has spasmodic dysphonia. It's a neurological disorder that can affect the voice and speech. He can do 25 pull-ups in one go. I can do 3. He's 70 years old, and he's running for president as an independent.
Cheryl, why do you think Bobby's running for president?
I think he feels like this is what he's supposed to do. He has a calling.
Who lives there?
That's my mom.
Can you talk about some of the values you learned as a kid from your uncle and your father that you're taking with you on this campaign?
Well, we had a duty, they felt, make America exemplary for the rest of the world. I think the major issues that my uncle and father were interested in this country was keeping the country out of war, and then the civil rights, honest government. Those were the principal themes of his administration. And that was all in a woman with the basic Catholic church values that we learned in catechism, which was just honesty, integrity, courage, the golden rule, being kind to other people, being kind to people, even those who you don't like. While optimistic about the potential for our country to still live up to its ideals. It used to be that the Democratic Party opposed censorship. It was the Democratic Party that wanted to rein in the military. It was the Democratic Party that fought corporate influence government, which is why Wall Street and the big corporations supported Republicans. Well, now that's all changed. Right now, big oil funds the Republicans, big tech funds the Democrats, big pharma and the military contractors make sure to donate to both. Who is liberal now and who's conservative? Who's left and who's right? These labels make less and less sense. I've been fighting corporate corruption for 40 years. I know how they work. I know how to clean them up. And that's why I'm running for president, and it's why I'm running as an independent. I think the country can be recovered and restored and can become a moral authority again in the world, which is what I want. And I'm going to work as hard as I can to make that happen. I started out my life wanting to be a veterinarian or a scientist, and my dad encouraged that. There was no pressure in our family to go into politics or public service. When he died, I felt kind of an obligation to pick up the torch that he had dropped. And so I changed my career trajectory to align it more with his.
I think everybody in my family really feels that a lot of my father's goals and ideals are worth pursuing.
And I ended up going to Harvard, which my dad did, and I went to the University of Virginia and became a lawyer and went into the DA's office, which was all very much aligned with my father's path. But I wasn't meant for that space, and I think partially my addiction was a reaction to that misalignment. I was doing things in my life that I was not intended to do. When I got sober, I reassessed my life and said, I've got to get back to what I wanted to do myself, which was something to do with the outdoors. And so I went to work as an attorney for fishermen on the Hudson River, suing polluters.
This is a pipe from the Putnam County Community Hospital sewage treatment plant
That had contaminated the river and were destroying their livelihoods and their industry and their property value and their lives. And it made me happy to work for them. Everything that has happened in my life has led me to where I am right now. The deaths, the tragedies, the addiction, the recovery, finding a deep belief in God. It's immodest to say those things. Running for president is inherently immodest. I believe now that I am uniquely positioned to tackle the problems that our country is facing.
In his decades-long battle to prevent big corporations from harming people, the wilderness, and our waterways, he was kind of like Aaron Brockovich, but a Kennedy. And he won hundreds of cases, mostly for people who couldn't get anyone else to take their case because it was such a long shot, or the people that they were suing were so rich and powerful. Take the Hudson River, for example. When Bobby started working to clean it up, it was so toxic that no one could swim in it. Rivers were catching on fire back then, and the pollution wasn't just a problem for recreation or health. It was killing the fishing industry that thrived for hundreds of years. And GE refused to even admit they'd done anything wrong. What did Bobby do? He fought alongside fishermen and concerned citizens for a decade, never giving up until the industrial giants who polluted it admitted they'd caused damage and paid to clean it up.
The last artifact of democracy is in our country are the law courts, where little guys can get a voice.
That's your death.
And that's what the inside of the kid's lungs are going to look like, too.
He fought and beat these big corporations because they had harmed the environment and, most importantly, the people living in that environment. It's a fight he's been in his whole adult life.
This battle that we're all fighting for today, that you're on the front lines of, this is the final battle. This is the battle against ignorance and greed.
Protecting the environment, protect animal habitat, protecting the air we breathe, those are not political issues. Those are issues that we should be concerned that our future generations can enjoy.
Here's a guy who is not talking about the environment. He is living with the environment. He's engaging with the environment. He is loving the environment. I remember staying over at his house with my sons, and I woke up in the morning and they were all gone. And I go down to the ocean, and there's Bobby teaching my two sons how to dredge along the shoreline, and he's saying, this animal is this, and this is so-and-so. That one you can't touch. This one, pick it up, yeah. And my boys are learning all of this stuff. And when I saw that, I thought I would love for a president to invite the children of America back into connection with their environment, and how remarkable it would be to glorify this thing that we are built to love.
We're hunters, we're fishermen. The land is our grocery store. The land is still the largest employer. A project was annexed, dispossess us. The land that would be flooded would drive us off the land. And Robert F. Kennedy understood the environmental impacts. Because of that, his political clout and his concern for violation of human rights, a concern for a free, prior, informed consent of indigenous peoples, we saved the river and saved the way of life.
He was so popular as a public official and an environmentalist, and he was so successful. There's a path he could have taken that I think most people would have taken. Don't rock the boat too much. Be a corporate-friendly environmentalist. Play by the rules. Let big oil do what they want. Let the chemical companies do what they want. Let all the big ag companies screw over all the small farmers. But he didn't take that path. He couldn't take that path. He knew that the problem with accommodating big corporations is it doesn't make any real change. You need to be courageous to make real change. You need to rock the damn boat. Because the system doesn't just need tweaks at the margins, it actually needs a wholesale rethinking.
Yeah, this was when I got arrested in Vieques, 34 days in Guanabo, which is a maximum security prison in Puerto Rico. The Navy was staging invasions of Vieques that mimicked the Normandy invasion. The people on the island were, almost all of them had been poisoned. The food was poisoned. The fish were poisoned.
Curiosity drives his intellect, just as compassion mobilizes his soul. He's talking about power and the nature of power, the manipulation of power, and the exploitation of power.
You know, I saw him sue Monsanto on behalf of one man. You know, people said that can't be done, you're not gonna win.
I basically would take care of stuff like this. All the trees, all the bushes. I was supposed to also apply pesticide. I got sick applying the herbicide. And I told my employer, they weren't buying that, and they were like, we hired you to do this, that's what your contract says, and that's what contracts are, right? So I was fired.
If my life were a Superman comic book, Monsanto would be my Lex Luthor.
My skin was really, really good skin before any of this happened. This thing slowly started, and then once it started, it didn't stop till they sent me to the doctor and got the results for cancer.
The doctor's prognosis of him was so desperate that it was unlikely that he would survive to try the second case.
You gotta realize I have full body skin cancer, and at one point, it was totally out of control. Clothes were sticking to my wounds.
The odds were against us, but the outcome was so important that it justified those high risks.
At that press conference, he was literally emotional. He was very happy for me and my family, and for Monsanto getting a swift one.
I don't think anybody thinks he'd be alive if he had not had millions of dollars to spend on medical care.
As a result of all this work, all these fights on behalf of the environment, he becomes one of the most popular and revered people in America. He's giving 80 speeches a year to groups all over the country. He's talked about as a candidate for higher office. He's offered the U.S. Senate seat for the state of New York, a job his dad had. He turns it down. It's hard to get more revered than this guy.
My name is Lynn Redwood. Bobby refers to me as the woman who ruined his career. I knew that he was going around the country lecturing about the dangers of mercury.
So these women start showing up at every lecture that I give.
Literally thousands of parents.
And they believed that their children had been injured by the vaccines. They would say to me, if you're really interested in mercury exposure to children, you need to look at the vaccines. Now, this is something I didn't want to do.
And it wasn't until one of the mothers was able to carry our documents to his house.
A pile of scientific studies that was 18 inches thick.
Knock on his door and convince him to read them.
When I read that, then I was like, okay, I got to drop everything and do something about this.
He wrote an article, and it was where he covered the minutes to a private meeting that CDC had, where they acknowledged these signals in the data between exposure to the vaccines containing mercury and autism. When they walked out of that meeting, that was not ever shared with the public?
I was kind of shocked by just the power of the reaction against it. Rolling Stone and Salon, which also published it, were just bulldozed with, these hate reactions. And then under pressure, Salon takes it down.
Here's the deal. There are only two entities in America who are immune from litigation: the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and pharmaceutical companies in their production of vaccines. That's it. And the rest of us are held accountable when we harm someone, but not Big Pharma's vaccines.
Way before any presidential campaign, I was struck by seeing somebody who was willing to take on fights against weapons manufacturers that are the biggest lobbyists in D.C., and then Big Pharma, which has now become the biggest lobbyists in D.C. And when I first heard of him, he was working against mercury in fish. Nobody ever said he was anti-fish. But as soon as he was interested in getting mercury out of childhood vaccines, then suddenly he's anti-vaccine, a pejorative.
He knows about the corruption. So, the attacks, the names that he's called, he knows in his heart that he's right.
He gets it from his family, his father especially, didn't care who liked him or didn't like him. When Bobby knows that there's an injustice going on, it consumes him.
He's a truth teller. He has a desire to set things right.
Thanks to pressure from millions of people, they've taken mercury out of most vaccines. But pharmaceutical companies are still immune from prosecution and litigation, and vaccines aren't subject to the same rigorous safety testing as other medicines. And that's not right. Companies who harm people have to be held accountable.
This industry is powerful, and it has deep ties with media, and it has deep ties with government.
Why do you think these drug companies are spending so much money on ads during the news? It's not to sell their products. They're doing just fine with that. It's because they want to control the message.
They hate Bobby Kennedy. There is a person standing in their way, like a student standing in front of one of those tanks in Tiananmen Square.
I fear that a rushed COVID vaccine wouldn't be as safe or as effective as we were promised. And I also felt that lockdowns were going to do more harm than good, especially to small businesses and to children. But when I made those arguments publicly, I was silenced.
So powerful corporations and partners in the media have a playbook they use on you when you beat them too much, and in areas you can cost them real money. They implemented every page in the playbook on Bobby when he decided to question the absolute moral purity of the gods of Big Pharma. Pharma was apparently beyond reproach, and when Bobby questioned them, his adoring press turned faster than the weather in Texas.
I did press on presidential campaigns and campaigns in general for almost 20 years. What generally happens with people like me is when we're done with the trench warfare of campaigns, which is low-paying and grueling work, big corporations hire people like me to come inside and implement the playbook, defend them from attacks, and run an offensive attack against people that the corporation doesn't like or who is threatening the corporation. And here's the way the playbook works. First, they attack you broadly and they question your facts. They say you're lying and it's ferocious. But if you keep on moving after that, they move on to character assassination. They take on who you are as a person. They dig up everything bad in your past and leak it to the press. If you had a fender bender, you're a reckless driver. If you paid a bill late, you're a deadbeat, and so on and so on. Every part of your life goes under their microscope. They try to embarrass you. They try to make you say this fight isn't worth what it's costing me, and you quit. But if that doesn't stop you, and it stops most people, but it didn't stop Bobby, they say you're a liar. If liar doesn't work, they say you're an anti-Semite and a racist. No two slurs in America are worse than those. No slur except crazy. Crazy or kook or crank or nut job are their mainstays. That's their nuclear option. Because if they can get everyone to dismiss you as a wacko nut job...
RFK Jr. spreading some really deranged lies.
I mean, his own family doesn't support him.
Everything you say is suspect. And then they can get back to selling whatever thing it is you said might not be safe. And here's the thing. It works. Like damn near 100% of the time it works.
There was a period of time, and when I was a kid, when doctors were recommending that you smoke cigarettes. There's advertisements.
Have you seen that movie, The Insider, with Russell Crowe and Al Pacino? Russell Crowe plays a whistleblower, Jeffrey Wigand. It's a true story. He worked at a tobacco company, and he blew the whistle on Big Tobacco. He said that cigarettes and tobacco were, shocker, addictive and cancer-causing.
We are in the nicotine delivery business.
That's what he told. The truth. What did they do? Big Tobacco destroyed him, and they used the playbook to do it. And here's the thing. If all the publications and TV shows you trust tell you someone's a crazy person, they must be a crazy person, right?
When you can just make things up, that must feel good to him.
Wrong. A lot of times, the crazy person is just someone brave enough to speak truth to power. But it's not like the playbook didn't work to a large degree. This is New York Magazine in 1995. This is New York Magazine in 2023. This is Vanity Fair in 2006. This is Vanity Fair in 2023. This is Rolling Stone in 1992. This is Rolling Stone in 2023. Standing up to them exacts a real cost, and that's why they do it.
I just thought it was important.
And what was the cost?
The cost was that I lost a lot of friendships, lost my jobs at the environmental groups. I lost the relationships that I'd built over maybe 50 years of life. I had close friends who just told me they couldn't be my friend anymore. So now I'm subject to this new form of censorship, which is called targeted propaganda, where people apply pejoratives like anti-vax. I've never been anti-vaccine, but everybody in this room probably believes that I have been, because that's the prevailing narrative. My children are vaxxed. I'm fully compliant with the vaccine schedule myself, except for COVID. I have never been anti-vax. Anti-Semitism, racism. These are the most appalling, disgusting pejoratives, and they're applied to me to silence me. If somebody shows me a fact that I'm wrong, I'm going to change my opinion, and I'll apologize. But calling me names is not an argument.
Bobby actually encourages healthy debate. That is the environment he's going to create in the country. Healthy debate, honest conversation, and a way forward that is derived from consensus is what's happening inside of the campaign. Now we need to have that happen inside the country at a large scale.
I read that, some of your family is against you running for president.
Well, I have a big family. I think last time we did a count at July 4th, there was something like 105 Kennedys, so it's not surprising that 4 or 5 of them, don't agree with every decision that I make.
I don't agree with Bobby on all issues. I don't expect to agree with my president on all issues. But what I take away from his stand on vaccines is that here's a man of the courage of his convictions. And he maintained those convictions in the face of incredible opposition and at enormous expense.
The other thing is, my family was raised to debating each other. Every night at dinner, my father would choose debate topics, and we would debate each other with passion, but also with respect and congeniality. I wish the same thing for our country. I wish that we could all disagree with each other on political issues and still see each other as part of a family. My father used to tell us that we should always do the most difficult thing. He'd say, do the thing that scares you most. If something frightens you, maybe you should do it. Because each time you do that, it gives you the opportunity to find the hero inside of yourself. Our duty while we're here on Earth is to embrace whatever destiny befalls us. And knowing that the more difficult a challenge is, the more unpleasant or tragic the circumstances of our lives, that all of those things are actually gifts. They're opportunities, because by surviving them and enduring them, we come away with a greater strength of character and wisdom. And we're not here on the earth to just make a big pile for ourselves, and whoever dies with the most stuff wins.
I I've noted already today how former President Trump is beating President Biden in 5 out of 6 battleground states in a hypothetical matchup. But if Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s name is specifically added to that ballot as a third option, then nearly a quarter of voters said they would choose him over Trump or Biden. RFK Jr. polling between 22 and 26% of support among swing state voters in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, Nevada, Arizona, and Georgia. Yep. Among Gen Z and millennial voters, he's beating both Biden and Trump.
If these numbers hold, he actually has a chance to win the presidency.
The RFK Jr. factor is more serious than I may have considered it beforehand.
RFK Jr. is polling better than any independent candidate since 1992.
He is a serious breath of fresh air. This dude is a powerhouse.
Veteran political journalists have urged, do not ignore Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
Democrats are in a total panic that RFK Jr. could spoil Joe Biden's re-election.
I like eating mistakes like this.
RFK Jr. could be poised to turn our two-party political system on its head.
He's a threat, RFK Jr.
We declare our independence.
I declare my independence.
Yo declaro mi independencia.
Robert Kennedy Jr. officially naming attorney and entrepreneur Nicole Shanahan for his running mate.
For the first time in this campaign, I'm hearing, oh, he could actually win. I've had friends text me, your husband could actually win this. Like, yeah, I know. Send.
A new NBC News poll shows 34% of voters suggesting they could see themselves supporting him.
I've watched so many of your interviews, and if people just heard you talk, you're so reasonable, and it's exactly what people want.
You're the first person in my lifetime as a 26-year-old who I have actually been excited about.
I appreciate his authenticity, period. He is curious. He's willing to admit his mistakes and his failures. He's willing to change his mind based on facts presented to him. And I do believe he truly cares about humanity and making this country better and making the world better because of that.
Let me ask you a big question.
Yeah.
Why are you doing this?
Doing what?
Running for president.
Because I don't like the way the country's going. I don't like the wars. I don't like the censorship. I don't like the addiction to war. Both political parties are now the war party. I don't like the corporate capture of our government. It's a merger of state and corporate power. And I think I'm in a unique position to be able to unravel it.
You have a family of political know-how, but have you committed yourself to a political future?
I don't think so. I think I'll probably do some form of public service. I think everybody in my family really feels that a lot of my father's goals and ideals are worth pursuing.
The good news is that people like yourselves are finally fed up. Something is stirring in us that says it doesn't have to be this way.
Here's a man that's gone through a lot that I think would understand the plight of the American people.
There's that movable middle of 70% of the people that want to bring our country back together.
He has a powerful dream of America. What American doesn't want? This horrible divide between red and blue to be bridged.
If I were to take on the corruption at the highest level of governments, I would want him in my corner.
He's saying things that make sense and that resonate with people. When someone experiences that, they feel a connection with him. They think, oh, he's actually a lot like me.
Look at his track record. Look at the things he's accomplished in his life.
The native name I would give Bobby would be one who sees the mountain and moves it. He's a mountain mover and he's a nation shaker.
If you read and listen to what I've actually said, and on election day, you think I'm crazy or any of the other disqualifying things that they've said about me, please don't vote for me. But I hope you read and listen to what I've said and arrive at the conclusion that together you and I can turn this country around. Because I believe that together we can make the dream of a stronger, more prosperous, more united America, an America controlled by you and not big corporations, a reality.
American Values 2024 is responsible for the contents of this advertisement.